Hello there. This is a very interesting case from the US, and I don't think it's actually going to be ruled against us, we the people, but on the off chance, and besides, it might have implications for other countries if they try the same. So let's cover it. The government says money isn't property, so it can take yours. In a jaw-dropping argument, the Department of Justice claims seizing $50,000 from a small business doesn't violate property rights because money isn't property. Think about that. $50,000, and the government can just confiscate it without a trial because you don't own it. It's not yours. It's just money. Huh. As a lawyer who sues the government, here the article begins, you get used to the different kinds of arguments that government lawyers use to justify abuses of individual rights. Sweeping claims of government power, bad faith procedural obstacles, and more. This was a new one. The US Department of Justice, the DOJ, argued that confiscating $50,000 from a small business did not infringe the business's right to private property because money is not property. Quote, money is not necessarily property for constitutional purposes, the government's brief declared, putting the very idea of property in scare quotes. Reading at my desk, I practically fell out of my chair. The DOJ gave 3 rationales for the argument, all packed into a doorstopper of a footnote. 1. The government creates money, so you can't own it. Now, stop here for a moment. If I decided to buy a chair, I didn't make the chair, somebody else did. Can I own the chair if I give him money in return for it? Then how come creating something doesn't mean perpetual ownership? Does it only apply to the government, this idea? Or does it make no sense at all? 2. The government can tax your money, so you don't own it. Again, how does that make sense? The government can tax everything. It taxes your house. It taxes your car. Hell, there are taxes for carbonated drinks or cigarettes or sweets or all sorts of stuff. In all varieties of justifications for your health or for whatever. How exactly the government being able to tax something mean you don't own it? Doesn't that mean you don't own anything? And finally, 3. The Constitution allows the government to spend money for the general welfare. I see. If the government can take your money to spend for the general welfare, let's go to everyone that we don't like or think is destroying society, like Bill Gates or George Soros, and take away everything they have because, well, it's for the general welfare. Oh, it doesn't work that way. It's only when you have a small business owner or somebody else that's not strong enough to actually fight back, and the government wants to harass them or seize an opportunity to make some easy money, I suppose. So, if a libertarian was asked to write a satire of a government lawyer's brief, the article states, this is what they might come up with. But here it was, in black and white. Whose money specifically was the government saying wasn't property? That of Chuck Sane, the owner of CS Lawn and Landscaping, a small landscaping business outside Annapolis, Maryland, which has operated for over 40 years. Sane became a client of the Institute for Justice, the IJ, public interest law firm, when the federal government sought to impose over $50,000 in liability on his business through a quote-unquote trial held deep inside the bowels of a federal administrative agency. At said trial, both the prosecutor and the judge were employed by the same federal agency. I love this idea. How about I create a business and then I make you, as the customer, face me in my internal court over every dispute, where the person who is in charge of the court is paid for by me. They are my employee and I pay their wages. Then you get to enjoy the benefits of losing every single time because, well, they will obviously side with me over you, because that's in their best interest if they don't want to get fired. No, I can't do that, it's illegal. But the government can. Amazing. Truly amazing. Well, we'll see if they can or can't in a moment. So, IJ sued, arguing that before the government can impose that kind of liability, it has to provide a real trial before a real judge and jury. The specifics of what the government claims Sane did wrong, in short, arcane labor law, are beside the point. If the government wants to confiscate over $50,000 from your business, you must have the chance to argue your defense to an impartial judge and jury, not an agency bureaucrat. Now, the DOJ argued that Steyn has no right to a real judge and jury because the government was only trying to take his money, not his property. They claim that fiat currency is a legal fiction that the government can as easily destroy as create. I mean, that's actually true, incidentally. Lest anyone miss the implicit connection to the history of the gold standard, DOJ's footnote prominently cited the legal tender cases, where the Supreme Court upheld laws forcing people to accept paper money rather than gold and silver as payment for debts. So, how about we just return to the gold standard and solve the problem? No, can't do that. This was an argument for taking Steyn's $50,000 without a trial before a real judge and jury, but the same argument could be used to justify all manner of mischief. If your money is not your property, what is to stop the government from just seizing all of it tomorrow for any reason it gives? Before you run out and trade your USD for meme coins, let me reassure you, DOJ's argument is wrong. The due process clause applies to life, liberty, or property, and the Supreme Court has repeatedly applied that clause to money. It follows that, since money is neither life nor liberty, it must be property. To be sure, DOJ's arguments have force as a philosophical critique of government, taxation, and the monetary system. They may also highlight legitimate reasons to hold part of your wealth in gold or, for some, cryptocurrency. But for constitutional purposes, to borrow a phrase from the DOJ, the arguments are a flop. Federal court will soon decide whether to uphold Steyn's right to a trial before an impartial judge and jury. Hopefully, the court will agree money is property, and an agency bureaucrat is not an impartial judge. Now, this entire thing seems to appear from Rob Johnson, who's a lawyer working for the Institute for Justice, the IJ. And this is the Twitter post where he basically says all of those things. He also includes this screenshot of the government brief, which is interesting because they say things like money is not necessarily property for constitutional purposes. Money is created by the federal government. Quote, whatever power there is over the currency is vested in Congress. It's from another case they're referencing. And the federal government is likewise empowered to take money through, for example, taxes. But not every tax is a deprivation of property under the due process clause or a staking of property under the taking clause. Thinking of money as property would also make little sense in light of the spending and property clauses. Since the earliest days of the Republic, Congress's ability to spend money was thought to flow from its power to provide for the general welfare. And that's why James Madison and Alexander Hamilton vigorously debated that clause and its implications for congressional spending. So it says here, there was no need for these debates if money were considered property. Congress could simply spend money under its plenary power to dispose of property belonging to the United States. So essentially they're trying to weasel their way into saying, well, you don't own anything. We'll start with money, but really the same arguments applies to pretty much anything in your life. And this is obviously a very how to put it? Ludicrous, ridiculous argument. It's so obvious if you think about it for a moment where it's going, which is why the top reply here is by argument number 2, the one about if you tax it, then if the government can tax it, then it's not yours. It says here by argument number 2, wouldn't any property be not property, example 1's house, since the government can tax it? The lawyer replies, indeed, I'm curious what the government thinks actually does qualify as property. Another top comment is, civil asset forfeiture and qualified immunity must both be eliminated. I fully agree. I remember a civil asset forfeiture case where a guy drove across state lines in a truck from a red state where he legally owned the firearm to a blue state where it was basically forbidden for him. And he had a bullet fall from a casing accidentally on the floor of his truck. And that was a big, expensive new truck. And they said, well, bring the one bullet without a magazine, without a firearm, just fell on the floor and we found it in a search. Bringing that into the country is illegal. You used the truck to commit a crime, so now, civil asset forfeiture, we're taking your truck. That's it. It's ours now. It's so ridiculous, it's maddening. Then there is a very humorous take on it. Well, if I rob a bank, says one user, taking only cash, then did I commit a crime? I mean, you didn't take property, right? So I'm not sure now anymore. Another person says, welcome to the nightmare we live with. That's why we're all nuts about private currencies and precious metal standards. This has been the Fed policy forever. So I can say that I definitely don't like the way that the federal government is trying to take this. I do believe that this kind of case is unlikely to pass with Trump at the helm. The pressure from top down in such cases that basically can set the stage for things moving forward on a national federal level are probably going to be impacted by the pressure from the top. And if under Biden or Harris, I would expect actually them to support this case against the landscaping company owner. On the Trump agenda, I do believe this would be considered very taboo, and they would put pressure against this sort of case. So my gut reaction says this will not be able to pass muster in court. I wonder if, much like most of what the left does today, this is a sign of things to come globally. If you notice, basically everything they try and do, every slogan, every move on a federal or state national level is usually global. It comes in a short while later everywhere else. Also, if you look at the media, they basically all speak the same exact words and sentences even, let alone ideas. I was reading an article in a Jewish Hebrew online newspaper here in Israel, and I was astonished. They just sounded like CNN. They were talking about Trump and the sort of Russia-Ukraine peace deal. And basically the language, the words, the phrases, it all sounded like just they translated it straight from CNN and from MSNBC. That's what it sounded like. So taking that into account, will we see similar issues arising, let's say, in Europe or in Canada or Australia? Places where the government is very much in favor of expanding its power and taking away your private property. And if these such cases are going to crop up there, I think it'll be much more contentious and interesting because, like I said, I don't think this is going to be a standard that will be applied in the US, but I could see it happening in Trudeau's Canada. Well, Trudeau is going to be out soon, but I doubt he's going to be replaced by anyone better, although I might be pessimistic. I understand that the right wing is getting some level of influence in Canada, hopefully, in the next election, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I do believe that left-wing, very authoritarian regimes are going to be open to the idea that money isn't property. The same people who claim that democracy and free speech mean that you can censor anyone that insults you or says anything you disagree with because you, as the government, decide which experts are the arbiters of truth and just you bring them forward. You say this is the way now, and anyone who disagrees, even if they themselves are also experts from the same field, or even if they are more successful and more published and more claimed experts than the ones the government chose, it doesn't matter. They can still be perfectly punished and silenced for dissent. What I'm trying to say is they don't really have a very strong grasp of democracy. They just use it as a slogan, that's all. And so the idea of taking away your private property without a trial probably appeals to them. What can I say? Just return to the gold standard and be done with this nonsense. Absolutely, I agree with what the government is saying here, that fiat money is a legal fiction that the government can as easily destroy as create. Yes, this is a correct observation. Let's fix that. We'll see. I doubt Trump has the political capital to do so, but perhaps if Trump is very successful and maybe pushes back on some of the already entrenched bureaucracy, maybe cancels income taxes like he said he is considering doing, then perhaps the next Republican president, if let's say someone like J.D. Vance succeeds Trump and wins the elections afterwards, who knows? Who knows where we'll go? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.